you realize the shame that you're gonna bring upon our entire family? Do you?
Forget that. What's Mom gonna say?
Every great story has stakes, something the characters fear that either motivates them towards their goal or away from danger. In Malcolm in the Middle, Lois is perceived as the all-knowing, ever-feared tyrant in a clear family hierarchy based on competence and moral responsibility. For the boys operating below, there are always two key obstacles to circumvent to avoid being punished: external institutional power, such as teachers, bosses, and cops, and the far more terrifying option, Lois. This ever-present fear creates constant conflict for the characters, and seeing them under this constant pressure shows us what tactics they will use to save their skin, which helps us to connect to them as people. But when quality character writing is done right, without even realizing it, they take on a life of their own. It's as if you could pluck them out of this one story and place them in a totally unrelated situation and still instinctively know how they would react. Because great writing isn't about characters always making the most logical decision available, it's about them making the most rational decision they could think of, based on their strengths, weaknesses, incentives, and outside influences. Malcolm in the Middle is one of the best family comedy series ever made, not because of one singular gag or storyline, but because of the character dynamics. Over 7 seasons, which admittedly could have been 5, we get to know the power structure within the home, the moral compass of each character, their tendencies, their natural abilities, and the vices that are most likely to lead them astray in the outside world. And in Malcolm in the Middle, the outside world that Lois is trying to prepare her sons for is depicted as harsh, dishonest, and unfair, despite it giving the superficial appearance of order. The boys are always fighting as if it's us against the world and even us against each other, and it's tough to say if this is their natural way of being or if this rebellious impulse has been developed due to their mother's authoritarian regime. If we take a look at the family power structure, we can see that Lois always resides up the top, and Dewey resides at the bottom, but everyone in between is in a state of constant fluctuation based on circumstance. Once we have an understanding of where each family member generally resides in the power structure, then the characters' motivations practically write themselves, as they either enforce, fear, or lash out at their current position. As the leader of the family, Lois dictates the rules. She manages to maintain this power position due to the level of responsibility she takes on. She works, cooks, cleans, lays down the law, and is always 2 steps ahead of the boys' latest scheme, because her life experience has led her to demand the best from people, but to expect the worst.
They're gonna pay you what all jobs pay. Less than you're worth and just enough to keep you crawling back for more. Now, go on, it's bedtime.
Morally, there is nothing ambiguous about her standards, either at home or in the outside world. She will always stand by what she believes. Something is either right or it is wrong, and if it's wrong, you should be punished.
No, no, no! You're not talking to him. He's grounded.
Life has been harsh to Lois. Despite working hard and trying to be honest, she's stuck in a dead-end job with so much responsibility that she doesn't have time to think about self-actualizing. This is what makes her flex as much power as possible over the one place she can command it, the home. She views herself as the last line of defense for her boys, making her a control freak, as without her in place, it would be total chaos, as the boys selfishly look out for their own self-interest regardless of the consequences. But this is also Lois's greatest weakness, as she struggles to take criticism or accept that she has any shortcomings.
Being right is everything. We did the right thing. That's what's important. I swear on my children's lives, I am right!
Lois is only softened by her husband Hal, who both share an undying passion for one another. Although Hal can talk to Lois like an equal, he rarely does. This is what makes Hal a weak second in command. He's such a subservient partner that he desperately fears disappointing Lois, so much so that he usually has a secret to hide from one of his endless shortcomings. And when that happens, he becomes no better than the boys, constantly trading his long-term authority for short-term help to not get caught.
I need someone to take the fall.
Oh my God.
What did you do?
I can't tell you. Yes or no, no questions asked.
He's a soft touch, and the boys know it, which is why whenever Lois is away, Hal panics and struggles to take control.
Now we are at 0 tolerance now! Do you hear me? 0 tolerance! Shut up!
His only real power over the family is the fact that Lois loves him, and he has such loyalty to her that he can threaten to rat on the boys anytime, making him more of a representative of her authority than an actual moral leader. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Hal is always getting caught up in petty rivalries, following his destructive impulses, making irresponsible choices, and without Lois in his life, he instantly falls apart. Although generally a happy-go-lucky guy, Hal is prone to meltdowns. He feels powerless within the home and in the outside world because he's stuck in a dead-end job, having never really got to explore his own potential. This pent-up frustration causes him to lash out, looking for a way to be seen, heard, and appreciated for more than his current position allows. Francis started off as next in line in the power structure, but over time, he lost his position. Originally, Francis was a prime example to his younger brothers for how to stand up to Lois and rebel against her. With Lois as the common enemy, Francis developed a cult of personality around himself when it comes to his brothers. His occasional calls to the house become cherished as the boys compete for his approval in the earlier seasons. But Francis's biggest strength is also his biggest weakness. He has a talent for rebelling against authority figures. However, he doesn't have the competence to lead himself, causing him to always have to assume a subservient role as he bounces from one harsh authority figure to the next. Francis is so traumatized from his dynamic with Lois that he brings that emotional baggage into every other relationship in his life.
You know, in Mozambique, talking about your mother this much isn't considered a turn-on.
But constantly just rebelling by default stops growth. And it's only when Francis enters a dynamic with the kind ranch owner Otto that he begins to define his own sense of right and wrong. By meeting someone that is so non-confrontational and open-minded to the point of being vulnerable, Francis is given room to think for himself, and begins to see that all those moral lessons Lois pushed on him also left an impression, as Francis now defends Otto from the harshness of the outside world instead of taking advantage of it. Then there's Malcolm, the centerpiece of the show, who's something of an outlier everywhere he goes. He's always too smart, too awkward, too different, or too normal to truly fit in. Similar to his mother, Malcolm wants to be proven right all the time.
Why, your brother couldn't be more wrong, nor you more right.
And his status as genius only reinforces this arrogance and self-absorption. As he gets older, Hal and Lois often defer to him for financial and even legal advice. He's slightly smarter than his peers in school, and in the group dynamics with his brothers, despite being the middle child, he's always the one getting pitched ideas and then has the final say.
I mean, let's really get out of here and get away from these people.
Where are we gonna go?
Wherever this takes us.
Let's go.
This is because Malcolm has a decent moral compass that develops more and more over the years. Through having to share with his brothers and negotiate with his parents, Malcolm succumbs to a similar philosophy to Lois, that everyone should be treated equally. Whether it be treated well or treated poorly, that there should be some justice, or at least an attempt at being fair.
But it isn't fair! That's right. It isn't fair.
This is exemplified time and time again when Malcolm takes authority into his own hands. For example, when his peers and teacher decide to cheat in the academic octathlon, Malcolm leaks the cheat sheet to all the other teams, so it cancels out any one team's benefit of cheating. When the school bullies Reese after Malcolm exposes his secrets publicly, Malcolm evens the playing field by reading details from every student's public record over the intercom to see how they like it. However, being an outlier, Malcolm has one glaring flaw that consistently leads him into trouble. He seeks social acceptance. This means that despite his strengths, he is easily sidetracked by superficial values like money, girls, or social points, regularly choosing to abandon those that are loyal to him in exchange for the chance to be briefly seen as cool. This also makes Malcolm extra sensitive to rejection, because his ego is built around the idea that he's meant to be better than everyone else.
You are the most selfish, thoughtless person that I have ever seen.
In many ways, Reese is the exact opposite to Malcolm. No one expects anything from him, not even himself.
Malcolm, you know I don't think things through. Turn off your brain.
It's not that easy.
Sure it is. I do it all the time.
Throughout the show, Reese has the most misguided sense of right and wrong, having grown to expect his mother or another authority figure to clamp down on his worst impulses. He never thinks through the consequences of his actions, instead blinded by his own self-interest.
If you hurt someone, empathy makes you hurt as well.
Then why would you want empathy?
For example, it was Reese's idea to start stealing from the church's charity, based on the justification that these clothes were donated to the poor, and he considers himself poor, so what's the problem?
Instead of one poor person getting a new shirt, now 2 poor people get one.
Or that donating 2 old items justifies stealing 1 brand new item. He and Malcolm develop a rivalry as kids due to their power struggle in the chain of command. Despite being older than Malcolm, Reese views them both as equals, but the rest of the family consider Malcolm the authority, due to Reese's total incompetence and lack of moral responsibility. Similar to Hal, Reese's weakness is that he destructively acts out on his frustrations, asserting the little authority he has with violence, and often ends up in rivalries with people or creatures that are on his intellectual level. However, there is one arena in which Reese shines: cooking. When it comes to the culinary arts, Reese's competence grants him temporary authority over the entire family, which he is all too happy to take.
What do you need?
Your mindless, robot-like obedience to every demand I make, no matter how small.
Dewey is the youngest family member, aside from Jamie, who doesn't really count, and as such has the least amount of power or authority in the house. Given he's not quite as smart as Malcolm and not as much of a troublemaker as Reese, Dewey is often left alone and forgotten about. He feels neglected and ignored, causing him to seek attention elsewhere, usually deciding to lie to other people to receive the special treatment that he doesn't get at home. Dewey is prone to having independent misadventures and keeping secrets, similar to his father. While Malcolm was sent to the Krellboyne class to receive special treatment, Dewey was accidentally sent to the class for the emotionally disturbed, where, similar to Francis, he uses his ability to help the more vulnerable. Given he's always got the short end of the stick, with no power in the home, it's no surprise that Dewey wishes for a world that were more in his control, somewhere perfect like his Lego cannibal utopia. Malcolm in the Middle does a great job of defining each character's role within the family, their areas of expertise, their dynamic with one another, their philosophies, and their weaknesses. But it's actually outside of the political inner workings of their home life that the characters truly shine, as everyone's vices lead them astray. In these episodes, typically it's that Hal struggles to hide a secret and acts out emotionally. Lois tries to assert control, but her authority doesn't qualify out here. Malcolm tries to prove he's smarter than everyone else or seeks social validation. Reese develops a rivalry, conducts a black market, or destroys something. And Dewey wanders away alone to seek attention. Until all of these characters' flaws and storylines come full circle and collide. Because once the audience truly understands the characters' patterns, then you can simply unleash them on any setting or situation and have a good idea of how it's all going to work out. And that's what made Malcolm in the Middle so good. The characters are not only at war with one another or the outside world, but with themselves, always trying to conceal a scheme, gain some authority, or overcome a perceived weakness. But their tactics and solutions are always true to their nature. And that's what makes the results so consistently hilarious. Well, you've made it this far, so you might as well like, comment and subscribe to help get this channel to the next level.